Welcome to the R7 podcast, sponsored by M is Good. R7 is an innovative, God-inspiring process that explores personal and professional purpose. R7 analyzes 7 strategies to transform your vision and find direction in your organizational marketing. R7 establishes clarity and guidance for the gift we call life. What up, my buddy?
What's up, man? Welcome to
Ringing in the new year.
2025.
Ringing in the new year.
Well, it's funny with a new year. I think you have a new announcement to make as we get going here.
Yes, it is Dr. Dave. A 13-year journey, chasing psychology, and December 6th, I defended my dissertation. And we're going to talk about that today, aren't we?
Let's go, man. I'm super proud of you. I think it's amazing. 13 years is a long time, as anybody knows. So it's funny. As I thought about this, one of the questions I was curious to know, and for those of you who are listening, I've not asked Dave this, so this is just right off the cuff here. What were the points that you had to grind the most? Because I can't imagine it was easy the whole time. It was like, you wanted to quit God knows how many times. Like, where did you really have to grind?
The DEI classes.
Oh, yeah. You're like, I don't like diversity. Inclusion is dumb.
That was a struggle.
Was it really?
Yeah. Those are the ones that took a real chunk out of me.
Yeah.
It was multicultural counseling. Those classes just were tough. So, I mean, I got through it, obviously. It was very informational. I learned a lot. I just had a problem with the authors when they say, the point of multicultural counseling is for white people to relinquish their positions and to be, for white people to be culturally responsible. They have to allow people of color to be in their position. And this is not about, multicultural, like I'm paraphrasing obviously in the book, but in the chapter, but it's like, to end white supremacy was their agenda.
Interesting.
It wasn't about hiring somebody who's, the right position because of their knowledge and their experience and their talent. It was just about color and putting them then in a position of leadership.
Yeah.
And so that was
it's kind of like what was said a few days ago. A few days ago, we just had the semifinals for NCAA football national championship, and Marcus Freeman at Notre Dame gets asked that question after the game about, what's it like to know that you could be the first African-American coach in a finals game? And he immediately said, well, I want the best coaches to have the best opportunities regardless of the color of their skin. And he completely kind of went around it and was like, this is about the talent and the people, and it's not about a racial profile, and it's kind of the same thing you're saying.
Exactly. I'm not a racist person at all. I want the right position. I hire people all the time. And I have been for 24 years running my company. And, it's all about, it's not about gender. It's not about race. It's not about, it's about, are you qualified for the position? Do you fit the skill set of what we're looking for?
Yeah.
I could care less, where you come from, what your background is. And honestly, sometimes I don't even care about your degree. Like I had a one time somebody came in. I hope you're watching this. His name was Kid Curtis, man. Like he was interviewing for a programming job, and he gave me his resume in programming language.
Oh my.
It was awesome. I'm like, it was like, what is this? And I had to bring my other programmer in. It was like, dude, he did his resume in the programming, like
That's funny.
That's so cool. I was like, kid, I love you, man. You're hired.
That's funny.
Just creative. I didn't ask where he went to school. I just said, okay, he can program. This is good.
Nice.
So, this is not what we're doing the podcast on today.
Right. I was just going to say, well, congratulations on getting your doctorate. I think, your heart around trying to add value to as many people as possible, through some of the things we've talked about, R7, mental prep, being committed to a rigorous process and program. I mean, all those things kind of have been on your journey. So it's exciting to see you finally get here, man.
Yeah, it's almost kind of surreal. Like, it's a 13-year journey. And I really didn't say, okay, it's gonna be 13 years. I just said, I'm gonna go on this journey. I really don't care about the title. I want to learn as much as I can about psychology. And why not go through the academic curriculum? Because it gives you like the next class you need to take and the next class you need to take. So it gives you a roadmap. And
Yep.
so I just enjoy learning. And it was never about the degree. It's just always about learning and how much can I learn and how much can I grow and change and I'm still kind of like it was December 6th. I'm taking a little break and I'm finding myself like I need to get back at it, man. It's been a month and a couple of days. Like I need to get back on that learning
Yep.
roller coaster. Yeah.
Well, that's good. So that kind of gives us a segue to what we're going to hit on today to kick off the year, right?
Yeah, yeah. So I'm gonna bring it up here in a second, but I do want to say something about like being rigorous because you bring that up and it wasn't all about that class and getting through those classes, but it was really I just want to add just a little bit to it, saying that this question of what is the future you're fighting for, that was always in the background of my motivation, and it still is today.
Mm,
And so, really, 13 years, I didn't care if it was 15 years. I didn't care if it was 16, 20 years. I didn't care. In fact, when I was doing my dissertation, which we're going to get into in a second, I told them, I said, look, they said, it's normally going to take about 18 months. I said, okay. I ended up doing it in 11 months, but it was like, whatever time it takes, we got to do it right. And, if I graduate this year or next, what's the difference? You know? And so it was just a matter of sacrifice and follow through. And so I think that got me through.
well, I think you have to have discipline in there too, right?
Yeah.
For sure, of having to
Yeah.
stay focused
Yeah.
and work on it every day, right? Or at least a little bit. And after a while, you actually have progress.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm gonna add this to the podcast here. So I did a phenomenological qualitative study. I explored faith amongst let's go back a slide here amongst professional hockey players. So I interviewed 8 professional hockey players, and I had a qualitative survey that went with it. Um, I'm sorry, it was a Qualtrics survey, not a qualitative survey. It was a Qualtrics survey because this was a qualitative study, phenomenological qualitative study. So the phenomenon that I studied was faith. So how faith was expressed amongst um, professional hockey players, 8 of them. And so you can see here their current age and their professional start age, and then where they landed pro wise. So I had a couple players in the NHL, I had a couple players in the SPHL, the ECHL, 3 in the AHL, and the ECHL. Now all this data has been scrambled, so there's no way you could put it together, who's where and what. Um, but this is sort of the breakdown and the results of who I interviewed.
Gotcha.
Yeah. And then 5 emerging themes came out: faith, development, and identity, faith as a source of strength and purpose, faith expression in professional hockey, ethical behavior and moral decision making, and faith fueled coping and resilience. So I do want to say that what's important to know about the methodology of this study was that uh, the emerging themes are really based upon just this population of these 8 professional hockey players. So it doesn't add a broad sweep to all. It's just within this population, this is what was pulled out, this discovery. So when you're looking at this, it's not across, the hockey or the Christian hockey space. It's just within this study itself.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Which one of these stood out to you the most when you saw this?
Yeah, yeah. I got to look at a little bit of it before. and I thought it was interesting that I think it was maybe theme 4 was the one that talked about the fact that some of the athletes in the study
Mhm.
found it very difficult to balance being open with their faith and being in a very secular environment, specifically pro hockey, it talks about. And I thought that was interesting that they were able to call that out.
Yeah.
I think it was 4, might have been 5. Uh,
Yeah, what's interesting is when you look at theme 1, you know, uh, they're a Christian who happens to play hockey, not a hockey player who happens to be a Christian. And so what I found was interesting about this is that their identity all stemmed, kind of swung off this theme. So because they identify as a Christian who plays hockey, the Christian, right? And then now what we can look at is, how does their source of strength come? How does their
yeah.
expression come? How does their behavior come? How do their coping and resilience? How are they able to cope because of their faith, because of their, faith development and identity? Um,
Yep. Yeah, I think the
the
one I was thinking of was theme 3.
theme 3. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, this was good. I had an NHL
Yeah, when
scout
I
say it.
yeah.
Yeah, this is cool. If I wanted to play hockey in the NHL, I need to basically stop praying at center ice and stop being so bold in your faith because people don't want that from their teams. Ruh-roh.
Yep.
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 That's crazy, right? Stop praying.
It is.
So
It is.
if you're a new Christian and you're not a seasoned Christian, right? Do you stop praying?
It's wild to me. I mean, because 'cause you're trying to figure out, like, is this an example of, like, Daniel in the Bible, right? Where it's like, "You don't pray, you only pray to me," and he goes out in his window and prays multiple times a day, and then, he breaks the new law that's been made, and he gets thrown in the lion's den. It's, famous story of Daniel in the lion's den, and I'm I don't know. Like, so you're trying to figure this out because what you don't want is a Colin Kaepernick situation, right? Where we're going to sit here and kneel for the national anthem and make this huge spectacle and this big thing. And by the way, if you hadn't noticed, dude hasn't worked since,
Mhm.
you know? And so it's one of those things where you're trying to be true to your faith and then you're kind of not wanting to be a distraction either, you know and I think it's a tough one to try to navigate in whatever ecosystem or environment you're in on whatever team you're on where you're trying to give God the glory. I mean, and you see it even today in the NFL after games where they all kind of go into the middle of the field and they get on their knee and they kind of arm in arm and they pray. That hasn't really wrecked anything for anybody. So the question I think you're trying to figure out is, you know what is the culture of the team you're on? What's the vision for that culture? Do you have the ability to have some self-expression there and be true to your faith? Does it mean you're going to hell if you don't pray? No. But I think there's a lot to navigate there. I think it's a lot more complicated than a simple yes or no. What do you think?
Yeah. Yeah. I think there's definitely that line of, okay, if I'm new, I don't want to upset the apple cart kind of thing, like, so I'll just not do it. I can pray by myself. I don't have to do it at center ice, you know? But then there's that bold proclamation of this is who I am,
Yep.
right? And God's in control. And I'm gonna let it fly, man. Like this is what I'm gonna do. This is how I got to this point, and I'm just gonna keep on rolling. Um,
What's
I think
crazy though
Yeah,
is
man.
I think we live in a time where self-expression is acceptable
Yeah.
unless, right? Unless it's typically a religious form of self-expression or something that goes against the radical left and then you become vilified for it. And I think
Yeah, I
that's
think
tough.
yeah, I think you have a good point. We just went through this whole I don't believe in what you think, so I'm gonna suppress you, shadow ban you, deplatform you.
Yep.
Which we're now coming out of that now, which is cool. That I think Zuckerberg just made an announcement last week saying, we're going to stop fact checking and we're going to let free speech just fly.
Yep.
Which I do want to say this, that I went to the University of Western States for my doctorate, and every class that I was in, I was pretty like not over the top, but just transparent that I'm a right wing Bible toting gun carrying Christian. And I want to say that, almost, no, all of my classes, everybody was respectful of that.
Hmm,
Professors, students, everybody was tolerant. I was expecting some level of pushback and I never got it.
interesting.
And so I was thankful for that, that they were, because they really like, this is a place of sharing your opinions, and we want to hear your opinions. Even in those tough classes I was talking about, like I like I shared my opinion, and it was very respectful, and it was very, thought provoking, and they were very mindful of accepting that, and I never got pushback. So I was very proud of my university for allowing me that space.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
Huh.
yeah,
Yeah.
because I know
Yeah.
we hear stories, and you hear stories in the media about how like
Oh, yeah.
or just things that are happening at different universities. That was not my case at all.
Interesting.
Yeah,
Well, that's really good. That's really good. But yeah, of the five kind of themes you had that jumped out of the
yeah.
coursework, that for sure, or at least your doctoral dissertation, that for sure, I thought was a pretty big one because that one's out in front, right, and in your face.
Yeah, I had another one that didn't really it didn't pull through as a theme, but it was definitely a sub theme that didn't make it into the final results. But there were a lot of players that didn't want to go to the strip bars. They didn't want to go to um, they didn't want to go out and do that. They didn't want to go out and party.
Yeah.
And so this ethical behavior, moral decision making, which this one pulled through. Like they were very like, okay, if I didn't get the assist, I just, you know, I would communicate that. I didn't want to, you know, I didn't want to take that credit, which was cool. But there were also that decision making, that more decision making had to do with strip clubs and bars as well.
Well, it's at every level is a strip club and bar thing, right? I mean, it
Yeah.
starts in college and away you go. And you, as usual, right, you normally have some ringleaders. And the thing is, if you're dead honest about it, there are a lot of people that I think get uncomfortable and they're like, yeah, I don't want to do that. Like, they're like, we live in a world where it's really hard to hide a lot of things.
Mm,
So, which means that these athletes that get put in those positions, they've seen people blow up their life. It's been front and center, right? Because of social media, because of just the way life is lived today. And I think you probably have an athlete today that's a little more sensitive to that and is going, I don't know that I want to do that, man. I've
mhm.
seen it wreck people, and I have dedicated my life since I was 6 or whatever, skating on a pond, wanting to make this my life's work because it brings me joy and I love it.
Yeah, what's interesting to me is of all the championship teams I've been on or I've coached through, there's always an antagonist. There's always something that challenges the group. And I think about this as probably the most important part of, sort of the study and building championship teams. Cause I think one of the questions was if all the players, if you were like, I was asking one of the players, like in the study, if you were the GM of the team, would you have all Christians on your team? Could you win a championship that way in the hockey culture? And the answer was no, I wouldn't have them all on my team.
Hmm,
And I thought that was really
interesting.
interesting. But what I was going to say, um, there's an antagonist, and so if you're not going to the strip club and you're not going to the parties, what's interesting to me is, are you becoming a wedge for that team cohesiveness?
Hmm.
So, a
Agree.
couple guys don't go because they're, morally or ethically challenged. Like, that's just something I don't want to do. Now, are you separating yourself out of the team? And do you
Yeah,
become the antagonist when you need to be the high performing athlete? We need some other outside force to be antagonist, not you.
right. Because you're trying to figure out, and you can go through team movies about teams, whether it's Hoosiers, or Rudy or whatever. Like these teams are, remember the Titans, another really good one.
Remember the
You
Titans,
know,
the antagonist
yeah,
there was
yeah,
the
the
was the
antagonist
culture.
was
Yeah.
racism. Yeah,
Yeah, it was racism, and so that pulled them
exactly.
together. Yeah,
Yep, yep. And so, yeah, you have to have something that's not one of the players
right.
because I mean it's really hard to win a championship with an antagonist. I mean, you got to imagine what it must have been like behind closed doors with the Bulls in the '90s when Jordan has to tell Rodman to get his head screwed on straight
Yes.
because he is that antagonist every game, and he's got to find a way to fit into that team and allow whether it's the other team, the referees to be the antagonist, somebody else, something else, the commissioner, whatever. He can't be that antagonist or that team can't function. Jordan has to have that conversation at some point. So does probably Phil Jackson.
Mhm.
Because the problem is, yeah, if you have a team where the antagonist is that person, then they got to get shipped out.
They gotta be shipped
I
out, and so
mean,
that's
how many
where
times have you watched that person get traded, right?
right. So, there's lots of ways you can be an antagonist. So, the moral dilemma of my Christianity, will not allow me to see that stuff. So I'm not going to go. You have to find a different way to not be the antagonist in that situation. So that team cohesiveness or whatever the guys are doing, so that you can, be part of the team. And
Yeah.
so that's an interesting line because if you're there to perform like the NHL or any pro sports, you're there to perform and you got to perform, and it's part of the team. And you know, um, you being a Christian is not part of the ownership and the coach's vision of what it's going to, of moving moving winning a championship is what I'm trying to say there. Sorry. Uh,
So let me ask you this then. In that idea,
mhm.
as if you're the coach of
Yep.
this team and some of your players go out on the town, right? And they do whatever they do. And you got some players that might be conservative, that are a little more focused on their faith. Does the onus come back to you as the coach to do some sort of, team experiences, events, or whatever that bring them together and force them to still get along? Like, I mean, you got people that will do ropes courses, you
Yeah.
know, physical fitness type stuff, go do karaoke or whatever. I mean, there's all kinds of crazy stuff you can do, but does that come back to the coach to know that, hey, if I leave it to them, the cultural chasm between some of these people is going to create an antagonistic experience. I've got to try to find a way to get around that.
Well, I think you do team building stuff that's cool, but at the end of the day, the power of the antagonist is way more powerful than anything that somebody could create on a team. I mean, just remember the Titans is a great example of that. They all had their little battles and what they thought about, you know, each other. But as soon as the rest of the world tried to come down on them, they all galvanized.
Yep.
So I don't know if it's about putting on a good team building or ropes and trust exercises kind of stuff. I think it's more so that you got to leverage what the power is, and that's that antagonist is culture, or person that threatens the group.
Yeah. It's the bulletin board material, right? Some of that where the team you're about to play is talking garbage about you behind your back. I mean,
Hmm.
that's an easy one,
Yeah.
but or no one believes in you guys, or the underdog or whatever. I mean, those are classic stuff. I mean, isn't that like Herbie Brooks type stuff, right? Miracle on Ice. No one believes in us.
No one believes in us. Exactly.
Yep,
That's the
yep,
antagonist.
yep.
They beat
And that,
you 2 days before, 9 out of 10 games you're gonna lose, but like this is your chance.
yep,
Like it's all building that. You know.
correct.
Um, I've got so many examples there that I want to share. I just don't want to throw anybody at the bus, but like, people that are trying to steal players from the team is always a good one, where they don't want to play for that other coach. I want to play for this coach. And, like that always helps, you know? So this is psychology, man. This is the stuff that I just love to dive into you know, um, and just look at the different options of what you could or couldn't do, you know? So,
So
This.
so
Uh,
coming on the backside of now of your doctorate and looking
yeah,
at the themes you had in your doctoral dissertation,
yeah,
how do you coach the players that are in these situations?
yeah. It's a great question. I think it comes down to their their walk, where they're at. Whether you're seasoned or whether you're not, in terms of uh, how much of a stand do you want to take? How are you navigating what we talked about? How are you navigating being with the team versus not being the team? Do you care? Do you not care? Is there a culture? Is there a winning culture there that we think we're going to embrace, and do we want to sacrifice?
Yeah.
So I think everybody's different in that space. There were some players in the study that they just don't even care, like what management thinks. They're going to go do this. They're going to go pray at center ice. They're going to do the community stuff. And management's going to leave them alone. Management's going to leave them alone, and so like they're doing their thing, and they're not disruptive in the locker room. But I also think that as a championship coach, you've got to create the culture, or try to put the pieces in play that could create a winning culture. And some coaches, they're playing that, they're going through the motions, but it's a skill. They don't know how to do it. So do I just let
So
the Christian go do that? Because it
yeah.
doesn't really matter. Yeah.
So I think that is some of the byproduct of what, and I didn't look at the year. We're probably, gosh, 10 years now past it, but there has to have been a list of lessons learned. If I go back to the example we talked about a minute ago with the Colin Kaepernick situation,
Hmm.
it's an amazing little case study.
Well,
If
Colin
you're,
Kaepernick, but also Tim Tebow. To me, they're
sure,
both the same thing.
yep,
It feels different, but they're both the same thing. They let that become bigger than the team.
there you go. Because that's what I was going to ask you is what do you think was learned by watching that go on by management of teams going, all right, I don't want that PR nightmare either. And what do you think was learned by athletes who watched that? Because both of them have moved into obscurity. Yeah, okay, Tim Tebow is doing college
Yeah.
football breakdown in a studio, but he's not playing in the NFL.
Nope.
Like, and either's Colin Kaepernick. So that's what I'm curious to know. If, as you think about it psychologically and culturally through the lens of management, the coach, and the athlete, what do you think the key takeaways are from that? Because you kind of got to lay that over top of some of the stuff you got here.
Yeah. Nobody's bigger than the team. Nobody. Like the coach, the owner. Like when your thing becomes bigger than the team, you're not gonna be there very long. Um, there's a great example of that. It just came out. I think it just came out with Tom Brady in Dynasty. The Dynasty. I mean, wow, that's a powerful message. It doesn't matter who you are, man. Like even if you're Tom Brady, you're not bigger than the team. Did
Yep.
you watch that?
I did not.
Oh my gosh, it's so good. It's so good. So, and Bill Belichick was very open to that. Like, if you're gonna perform, you're gonna be here. But as soon as you're not, I'm gonna find somebody else who's going to perform at the level I want you to perform at.
Yeah.
And Tom Brady was, he made a career from that, but he had to fight for that, man, all the time. Um, and so, um, even before Tom Brady was there, do you remember who was there before the quarterback?
Drew Bledsoe.
Drew Bledsoe, and he was the man. And
Yep.
then what happened? You remember what happened?
Yep. He got hurt and
He
Brady
got
goes
hurt,
in, man.
and Brady goes in,
Yep.
and Brady goes in, and then Brady gets hurt later on, and then they drafted somebody, I forget his name, really high,
Yeah.
and then that was that was a threat to Brady, and he wasn't gonna give it up. So he
Yep.
just kept on learning and growing and changing and watching video, like he put himself in a position to win, and then he became bigger than the team after I think he won the sixth. He became bigger than the team. Him and Belichick had a falling out
Yep.
um, because of
Then
their
he goes to
trainer.
Tampa. he goes to Tampa and wins another Super Bowl though.
And he goes to win the Super Bowl. Yeah.
Crazy.
So what's the lesson of that is, yeah, I get it. Your faith is there and we believe in that, but it can't be you got to navigate that so it doesn't become bigger than the team. It can be bigger than life and you can strive for that identity. I love that, of you know, that performing that or coming alongside the idea that, I'm here to glorify the Lord with my talents and my abilities. I am all in on that.
Yep.
Right? That is my North Star, but it can't be the team's North Star. There's a difference there.
Yep.
Yeah. That fires me up.
Yeah, I just think it's an interesting takeaway. I think we've been offered some really good cultural examples that force us to really think about that because not only is this bigger than the team thing a part of it, I think ownership had to figure out like how much how much when you can call it cultural capital or fan capital do I want to spend on this?
Mhm.
Like, do I want to create drama? Like it doesn't take much to figure out, which team typically has the most drama. It's the one that has the most crazy owner. So we go a little bit west of where we all are, and we end up in Dallas, right? And yesterday, Jerry Jones announced,
Oh, I
you
saw
know,
this, yeah.
yep. He announced that they decided to let their coach go. And there's a commentary, I believe, on ESPN that's like Jerry Jones is crazy,
Mm.
right? And I think from an ownership standpoint, you've got to kind of weigh all that in the balance. Do you want to speak to it or do you not want to speak to it? Like you said earlier, is it worth it or you just let it go? Like you're not hurting anybody by letting somebody pray in center ice. No one's going to die. Everything's going to be
Yeah.
fine. But the more control you try to exert on an athlete and the more I think control you try to just put out in general can backfire on you and really hurt your brand of your team as well. And the other players are going to see that. It's something nobody knows.
Yeah. What's interesting too that I really gained from this is that my best guess is that there are 1 to 2 Christian hockey players on a team throughout all pro hockey. And I do think it's important to understand where people are coming from, right? Understand how to get the most out of people and, you know, to perform. Even in our corporate culture, right? Like understanding people and understanding, what makes them excited to come to work every day. And so one of the things that I think is interesting is this study allows for management at some level, whether it's ownership or GM or coach, to understand a Christian and how they see the world if they're on their team. Like this is a roadmap to say, okay, here are some emerging themes that are important to these couple of players. That
Yep.
if I want to be more relatable and I want to, help them become the best version of themselves, like I want to help everybody on the team, this is a really good roadmap for that.
I love it. Yep. That's great. Because, yeah, you're trying to figure out how to navigate it for sure.
Yeah. And at
For
that
sure.
level, like there's a lot at stake.
No, no
And
doubt.
so if I have a couple players, I think it'd be interesting to give them to really just increase the quality of the conversation. Yeah.
Yep. Yep. Well, I love this, man. This is great. So, how do you kind of bring it together then with what you learned? How does this translate into kind of the theme of our podcast? How does it translate into R7?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely is in the messaging side of things, how you talk to people. It's in the communication side of things. So it's that 5 communicate messaging. It's hard to say that messaging and communication is not part of everything. It's really kind of the overarching umbrella for everything that we do. It all starts with messaging and how you're relating to people. I think. What do you think?
Nice. You know, I not only is it messaging, you may hate this idea, but I'm gonna put it out there anyway. I think it's part
Yeah.
of your brand.
Oh, yeah.
I do. I think
It
I
is for
think
sure.
yeah, I think as a Christian athlete, you gotta decide what kind of brand do I want? I have a Tim Tebow version of a brand,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
I can pick other Christian athletes that are out there and look at their kind of version of their brand. There was a soundbite that came out at the presser after the Ohio State Texas game a few nights ago, and it was one of the Texas athletes just completely going off script there at the press table, talking about God and the impact his relationship with Jesus makes, and how what they're doing is trying to glorify God in every way possible on the field. And I'm like, there you go, man. That's the
Yeah.
brand you want to have. Go get it. Go after it. So I think from an R7 standpoint, you as a person and those that are listening, if you're a hockey player or athlete, whatever sport you're in, you have to make some conscious effort to decide what brand do you want, right?
Mhm.
And then make sure your choice is authentic to who you are. Don't be somebody you're not, you know, but make some decisions about your brand.
Yeah. Yeah, brand identity is everything, man. It
Yeah.
definitely fits in that space, and, it starts with the messaging and then communicating, your brand promise, and so whether it's, I'm gonna be I'm gonna have the most integrity, the most excellence, I'm gonna make the best decisions for this team, which will fall in line with, my biblical beliefs. And you don't even have to say that. You just do it, right? Like you just act that way, and you show up early, you come late, you perform at, like you consistently deliver what the coach wants. That's You don't need to like open up the in my opinion, you don't need to open up the Bible and say, here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna do a Bible study. No, man, just deliver what God has called us to do, and that's to be excellent in the marketplace on all levels.
Yeah.
So how am I communicating? We talk about MEPS now, mental, emotional, physical, spiritual, like I'm gonna deliver, and so did Tim Tebow take that too far? I think he did. I think he did. I think he deserved to get fired, honestly. I mean, it was just too over the top, man. I don't know. As a God fearing man, would you want him on your team?
I don't know. It makes me wonder how how Urban Meyer handled that, because that is
Mm-hmm.
not who that dude is. At least that's not how he's been portrayed or allowed his brand to be portrayed out there. So did Urban Meyer, when he was at Florida, just let him do whatever he wanted to do? Because he was still very outspoken,
Yeah.
big time. But like, you get into professional sports, and I mean, there were some moments there where he wins a playoff game in Denver as a
Mm-hmm.
Bronco, and they have him mic'd up, and he's singing worship music as he's warming up and everything else. And I'm going, like, hey, hopefully you're a great teammate. But there's a part of this we didn't even talk about. Not this is all about you, Mr. Tebow, but like, he's an okay quarterback. He's built to be a tight end, man. I mean,
Yeah.
that's really his body style, and he refused to back off of that.
Mm.
And so then the question was, did you make yourself less marketable because you refused to just acquiesce to where the professional people know you need to be based on your body type and your skill level,
Yeah.
right? And if you chose to buck that, and then you throw what we just talked about on top of it, you're in a no-win situation, man, because he ain't going to listen. And maybe
Yeah.
maybe I'm getting to this in another way, but maybe that was a trick where you know he could do what he needed to do for Urban Meyer at Florida at the college level. He could do all the things, and Urban's cool, right? Because he wants to win national championships no matter what. But that doesn't translate into pro football.
Yeah.
No,
No, it's a good point. It's a great point. You know.
the
Um.
the flip example of this is Taysom Hill in New Orleans. I mean, for those of you that watch the NFL a lot the last few years, he's a quarterback. Came out of college as a quarterback, and he's been this tight end machine the last few years in New Orleans.
Mm,
Yeah, and he's gone in and played quarterback on plays because that is his normal position. But NFL told him, and he watched what happened to Tebow, and he said, "Okay, cool, I'll be a tight end." And that's exactly what he's done. And he's a good weapon in New Orleans. There's a lot of wide receivers that used to be quarterbacks that became wide receivers because it was just a better fit. So I think the part of this that like I said, we haven't talked about is coachability and the ability to listen. And if you don't think a pro team cares about coachability, you're crazy. Like, they don't want the drama. They're not interested in that. Then you take all the extracurricular stuff on top of it, and it's like, I'm not interested. I have
It's
no
just
time.
too much. It's just
It
too
is too
much.
much.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah. Um, awesome, man. Any let's land a plane here. Any final thoughts about the dissertation, the themes,
You know
the
what? I remember when you told me what you were going to work on, and I was like, this is going to be really cool. So it was fun to read it. It was fun to kind of see kind of where you landed. I'm very thankful for those 8 hockey players that were willing to
yeah,
kind of give you their opinions and in a safe way, kind of share with you kind of their frustrations and the things that they're up against. I think that's good. What I hope is for people that see this, understand that there is a balance that's out there, and you got to know your audience. You got to also be convicted. You got to be authentic. There's a lot of pieces that go into the recipe of what you're talking about. And it's not typically just an all or one answer for everybody. It's just, you've got to take the time to kind of wade through it and figure out kind of
I like that.
what are you trying to do? What's your brand?
I love that.
What's your environment like, and make a wise decision.
Yeah, it's good stuff, man.
So I have a question for you as we wrap
Yeah,
up.
yep,
Can you, because we've talked about this a little bit, you want to give our listeners a little bit of a preview of what we're about to dive into in 2025?
yeah. Go for it.
No, I'm asking you.
Uh, I don't know where you're going
Oh,
with this. What are we
baby.
doing? What are we doing?
Oh. So we're talking about the idea of
Oh,
finding
yes,
examples. Oh, let's go, right?
yes,
Of getting examples as this podcast continues to change and kind of
yeah.
evolve, where we've got examples that you as a listener, many of you you've probably seen them, and we're going to try to stay as current as we can, but really begin to break down, this idea of when someone is really good and they're high emotionally intelligent, they know what they're doing, and when people are not. And Dr. Dave Jones has made this comment before, that sports is a
Yeah,
petri dish
yeah,
of emotions.
yeah,
And, Dave and I have been in situations together where we've had to be very emotionally intelligent around church people and some other stuff like that, in really dicey spots. But in sports, you got to watch on ESPN, you'll see it. So we want to start diving into some stuff where we can kind of give you all some examples so you can begin to see what it looks like, because our hope is that you can also apply that to your life and be able to kind of be better, and I can be better and you can be better. I mean, none of us are perfect.
So, I guess I can say this here. I've got a couple interviews with some producers that can help us out with it. So it's
Nice.
moving. It's moving forward. In fact, I'm having the interview tomorrow.
Slowly but
Um,
surely.
so yeah. So high and low emotional intelligence, real current sports, where players are being low EI, and we're going to dissect it. So we're looking at doing
Yeah.
that this year, which is going to be a lot of fun.
As a Bear fan, I'm used to seeing low EI activity, so this will be great.
Bear fans and Jet fans.
Oh my
So.
gosh, so bad, so bad.
All right. We'll be
Man.
back here in a couple weeks, right?
All right.
All right. Thanks again for joining us. I want to give special thanks to our sponsor, M is Good. Want to learn more about M is Good? Go to misgood.com. Join us again next week as we continue to uncover the secrets to success with faith-based testimonies and the power of R7. Remember, destiny awaits, but time does not.